I'm Annika Haataja, and this is SEO in 2024.
Annika, what's your number one SEO tip for 2024?
Well, my number one tip would be to really consider how AI can impact the different stages of user buyer journey and also search intent moving forward. So as we all know, search is going through this massive transition, and we're experiencing a bit more sort of personalization, which has been part of SEO for obviously a long time now. But when we're moving more towards these AI searches and AI like assisting users when trying to find the right solutions, we really need to consider how that search behavior itself will change moving forward. So we're often looking at the user buyer journey. We have those sort of more core 3 stages that we often consider. Some people, consider more stages, but the awareness, consideration, decision, all of them might have slight impact from AI in the future. And especially now looking at, Google's plans, AI isn't going anywhere. It will continue probably becoming more and more prominent in search. So yeah, really need to get ready for it. And we need to start to understand it as well from users' point of view.
So how do you analyze AI's role in the different stages of your user's purchase journey and search intent?
Yeah, so obviously now a lot of these AI tools such as SGE, they're still, testing phase. A lot of SEOs are using them in a certain way when they're trying to figure out, how their search queries are actually showing, what different elements you can see in the new search results. So that's going to be, I think, one part of your content research and content strategy building. Going through those AI searches, similarly to how we used to do keyword research, we included sort of SERP analysis in our research phases to really understand what does Google think the user intent is, what's the keyword intent, what are the types of results that they're showing. Now we have to do that same with the AI searches as well. Obviously, we see that there's a lot of layout shifts, maybe even daily. And because of the personalization, obviously, different people will see different results and different types of elements in these result pages. But really understanding what's available, what can we see, for example, with SGE, it's quite same with Bard and Bing as well. We have the synopses at the top, a bit more informational content there. We might have links to blogs or, other informational articles, then product descriptions and product listings, perhaps even a suggestion of you might want to check out these products. They might be relevant for you. So yeah, it's sort of quite full on when you think about it for the user. And I would assume that some of these buyer journey stages will take a bit longer on Google. So instead of doing that on the website, by consuming your content, these 2 stages especially will be often conducted on the SERPs themselves. And therefore, we might see impacts on, click-through rates, especially for certain types of queries. But that also can relate to potentially higher conversion rates, as we have potentially less traffic to our site, but that research has already happened before the user lands on the site. We might actually see better conversions.
Okay, well, that's a positive then, potentially. It feels like, though, that in the past, SEOs had more control over the intent that they were serving because they could control the content that was being surfaced for particular keyword phrases. And nowadays, search engines are, to a certain degree, picking what they want out of pieces of content, and AI is potentially even going to be more niche in terms of precisely the answer that they serve the user. So do SEOs still have control over the abilities to serve the needs and expectations of users?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's going to be even more important than now is to try to serve those different user intents with your content. So, a lot of people, they focus on commercial or transactional keywords, which is great. However, what is actually a commercial keyword? When you do that search on, for example, SGE or even Bard, your intent might not be very clear You might be searching for, I want to buy a raincoat or something, because now we're moving towards the more conversational language as well. You might actually not want to buy it straight away. Even though your intent says that you want to buy it, but you're still, trying to find information. You might even, stop the journey completely. Maybe you decide, okay, it's not, the right time of the year. I might not even need one, but, the results that we get combine the different types of information, whether it's, informational, commercial, and, even navigational searches will change. We've seen that if you, for example, search for Nike sneakers, you might get different, sites obviously selling Nike sneakers. Even when you click on the result, you might not even get to the page. Maybe there's a pop-up, things are moving around quite a lot. But yeah, making sure that we do target those different user sort of search intents by bottom of the funnel, middle of the funnel, top of the funnel keywords is not only enough to, optimize your product descriptions, for example. You do really want to be able to be the result when it comes to the synopsis as well. Potentially, the blog articles that are explaining about, providing that assisting information for the user to be able to make that decision, to be able to compare the different features, different elements. So really kind of like a holistic way of writing content.
Got you. Okay, so you're pretty comfortable that AI will be able to deliver all aspects of the customer buying journey rather than actually just focusing on one particular part of it and reducing what you're able to do in terms of driving traffic to your website to just the transactional element.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it's quite important to consider the future when it comes to data as well. So before, when we look at, as you say, transactional queries or transactional searches, it has been probably quite easy to determine what keyword is actually transactional. However, now we need to branch out, not just trust the data that we see in the SERPs, but also make sure that we analyze the data after the consumer has been to our site. So combining data from the AI searches, potentially tools like Keyword Hero, you can actually determine the click-through rate and the conversion rates for certain keywords as a sort of combination of different metrics, and really analyzing that data and using that to build a better content strategy. So we get different information and different data as SEOs now, which can be utilized for content strategy. Even when we do searches on, for example, SGE or Bing, they have suggested follow-ups. When you read those different sort of long tail queries, you might be able to determine a wider strategy for your content, for the specific topic. What kind of article should you be actually writing? What does the AI consider important? And therefore, what do they assume user considers important as well? So we can take quite a lot of learnings from these searches, even though they're not perfect. Obviously, when you search for something, for example, in Bard, maybe the synopsis is quite a good, overlay of what are the different features that you should be looking at when you're doing these sort of searches and when you're trying to purchase a product. Sometimes the products that they offer might be just from an article which lists the best products of 2023 for that specific category, without actually analyzing whether they are best for a certain reason. But obviously the search is changing, and all these different large language models are improving as well. And we need to keep up, really. We need to understand how they find the information. So when you write content for the different stages and the different intents, using clear language, making sure that the AI understands it as well as the user, structuring it in a way that is easy to find those nuggets of information that will probably be a bit more prominent in the synopses. And yeah, creating helpful content that's never going to go out of fashion is going to be even more important now moving forward. How do you get your article to be top of SGE and get that link? By creating really helpful and unique content. So Google has been giving us these hints for years now, and I think in 2024 it's going to be even more important.
And will, as part of that helpful and useful content, will Google Perspectives be a great opportunity over the coming year? Because we're seeing that tested at the moment with user-generated content offering alternative opinions to the facts that AI spits out. Is that traffic opportunity only going to grow?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess what it does, it expands your opportunities when you're writing content and when you're building content, working with influencers in your area that not only could help you boost, your EAT, showcase that you are a prominent brand in your field, in your industry. If you're working with influencers who have a lot of prominence and visibility, it can only help you. And when you get visibility through, perspectives, any other important area when it comes to, for example, Google Discover, we need to branch out from the more traditional searches and understand how the different searches actually work. So we'll be moving towards more multimodal search. Images, videos are going to be even more and more important to be able to stand out, to be able to showcase your expertise as well.
Now, the challenge, I guess, that Google has and other search engines have with quickly adapting and changing the way that search operates is that might be fine for early adopters, but you'll get many other users of search that will be uncomfortable with that and perhaps go to a search engine with a more traditional interface. So do you have any thoughts on whether, I guess, more traditional searchers are going to be comfortable with using AI and simply just relying on AI as the answer to what they're looking for?
Yeah, it's obviously difficult to say. There's been sort of obviously up and down when it comes to adoption and some, surprising results as well, sort of younger generation being quite open to the AI searches, even though they are relatively new. And when it comes to accuracy and, potentially sometimes even false information, usually younger users are quite against that. But it seems like one of the studies that I read actually sort of 18 to 25-year-olds are quite open to these searches. And I guess we can't assume that because if you as an SEO, if you don't use AI search, it doesn't mean that your user won't. And when we're looking at optimizing for these AI searches, we're not only doing it for the AI, but also just general, even traditional search will be better when you do optimize your content, when you make sure that your content is helpful for the different sort of user behaviors and user intent. So it's not like you're going to lose in traditional search. You're still going to do great. However, when we look at these different metrics, we just need to understand what the impact will be. Even, when you look at your metrics moving forward, what will be your KPIs? Will you be focusing on click-through rates? Will you be focusing on conversion rates? And what will be your new benchmark as well? So even if the AI searches won't become as popular as, they were originally predicted in the first year, you never know what happens in 5 years' time as well.
Does this mean that the setting of a content marketing strategy at the beginning of a year is going to be radically different? I mean, what would you advise a client if you're sitting down with a client at the beginning of a year and they were saying, okay, we've seen this AI, we've used ChatGPT, we want to make sure that we're as prominent as possible in the results here. What does that mean in terms of our content production strategy and the type of content that we produce moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So as mentioned before, looking at the different sort of buyer journeys and how do we satisfy the user intent for those. When we're doing research, we need to branch out and make sure that we're actually analyzing the more longer tail conversational keywords as well. And I guess when we're looking at content strategies, not just for content production point of view, but also can we utilize that in the future for link building, for example? So we've seen before that searches like which happen on Bard or Bing, often they bring results from these listicle articles as well. So how can we make sure that, we're visible in these articles? How do we get a link? How do we get a mention? And how does our content strategy support that? And obviously everything is sort of connected. So when we're talking about content, UX, links, technical, when we try to optimize for these AI searches, everything, the different elements of SEO will help each other. So when we're creating great content, great product content, we want to, boost that with product schema. When we're creating sort of assets or, informational content that can boost our, digital PR and link building efforts. So the basics of SEO won't change massively. It's just where we focus our attention to will probably be a bit more strategic as well.
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2024?
So I know I just said everything's connected, content, UX, technical links. However, we do still see some SEOs trying to chase for this sort of 100%, site technical health, which is great. It's especially great for when you're starting and trying to learn SEO and what, different optimization actually does and how does that improve your site. But the really key thing is to consider what are your competitive advantage really. So when we're looking at sort of 3 really big areas, so you might have a very strong brand, or you might have very strong sort of link profile, or you have very strong content, analyzing what are your key advantages and how do you leverage that. And with content, you can really do really well, even if you don't have a strong brand or even if you don't have the perfect link profile. And what's great with content as well is that it can actually help you improve your conversion rates as well. Links, not so much. Brand obviously builds trust, but with content, you can really drive those conversions. And yeah, having that sort of strong content strategy in 2024 is really where the money is. So yeah, I recommend definitely focusing on that.
Annika Haataja is head of SEO at Seeker Digital. You can find her over at seeker.digital. Annika, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2024.
Thank you.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2024, the book, over at seoin2024.com.